Hello, welcome to the channel. Today's deep dive expands the latest spoilers into a fuller narrative of shifting loyalties, risky schemes, and emotional landmines across Salem's families and power players. Across town, agendas collide as adoption dreams, courtroom fallout, and a resurgent stalker threat converge to set off a volatile week that tests reputations and relationships alike. Johnny under fire. Johnny DiMera is thrust into unwanted headlines as detractors seize on old sins and fresh rumors to paint him as an unfit prospective father, turning a private journey into a public inquisition. With parenthood plans in motion, even a minor misstep could be spun as proof he lacks the steadiness adoption boards want, and competitors in Salem's media sphere are eager to amplify any smear. The air gets thinner around Johnny as whispers about his past and proximity to scandal threaten to overshadow his present marriage and future aspirations. Sophia escalates schemes. Sophia's sabotage kicks into high gear, leveraging half-truths and engineered optics to undercut Johnny's credibility as a dad while straining Chanel's optimism about their path to adoption. Her strategy is simple and ruthless. Create a trail of doubt that sticks to Johnny no matter what Chanel does to stabilize the picture, and keep seeding crises until decision-makers blink. The plan is less about fact than perception, using shock value to frame Johnny as volatile while positioning Sophia as the catalyst for chaos from the shadows. Adoption at risk. Adoption processes in Salem are never straightforward, and this one gets squeezed by rumor, innuendo, and a weaponized narrative that aims to derail Chanel and Johnny's file before it reaches the finish line. Gatekeepers may not need proof to pause a placement, and Sophia knows that a single concern in the wrong inbox can trigger review panels that take months to unwind. Expect procedural hurdles, surprise interviews, and a flurry of clarifications that force the couple to relitigate their stability under a harsher light than any loving family deserves. Holly scandal fallout. Sophia's latest angle appears to manipulate Holly Jonas's vulnerability, with drugging setups and staged imagery designed to insinuate boundary breaches that never happened, then pin the mess on Johnny by implication. Days Cafe teases cruel optics that make sleeping Holly look scandalous, a Jan Spears-style mind game meant to generate viral disgust and institutional suspicion, not truth. If those images circulate, Johnny could face a storm of reputational damage, HR scrutiny, and social blowback that feels radioactive ahead of any adoption review. Chanel's resolve. Chanel anchors the partnership with calm determination, countering the smear campaign by recommitting to their adoption plan and making the case that love, structure, and mutual accountability define real parenthood. Even as the noise grows, Chanel's instinct is to keep the file clean, the home steady, and the story straight, trusting that consistency beats theatrics when social workers look past the headlines. Her grace under pressure could be the difference between a delayed decision and a derailed dream. Leo and Javi angle. Meanwhile, Leo Stark's attachment to baby Tesoro intersects with his suspicion of Johnny, setting up an investigation that may mix genuine concern with self-interest as he pokes through old files and fresh gossip. With Javi urging restraint, Leo still believes his proximity entitles him to protect the child by questioning whether Johnny should ever be near a nursery, which only feeds Sophia's narrative machine. If Leo's findings get laundered through Salem's rumor mills, even disproven claims could linger long enough to bruise the adoption timeline. EJ's shadow and memory trap. The EJ shooting still casts a long shadow, with spoiler chatter pointing to Rachel as the true shooter whose buried memories could explode at precisely the wrong time for Johnny and Chanel. If those memories surface publicly, the revelation would scramble loyalties and legal strategies while recontextualizing EJ's moves and Kristen's sacrifice. The truth may finally separate Johnny from the darkest accusations, but only after another round of public pain. Rachel at school. Unstable behavior at school hints at a deeper spiral for Rachel, who appears to be channeling Kristen's worst impulses while lacking the adult guardrails to self-correct in high-stress environments. The specter of a pregnant teacher in harm's way is exactly the kind of flashpoint Salem officials cannot ignore, pulling institutional oversight into a family drama already on edge. The corridor between classroom misbehavior and catastrophic consequence can be frighteningly short when grief, guilt, and dissociation collide. Kristen in prison and Ripple. Kristen's return to a cell destabilizes Rachel further, transforming normal teenage turbulence into volatile acts that carry adult-level consequences as she lashes out at the world for taking her mother away again. Kristen's self-incrimination was meant to shield Rachel from an unbearable truth, but the unintended result may be amplifying the very trauma it hoped to contain. Every day Kristen spends in Statesville becomes a ticking clock on Rachel's capacity to keep it together. Marlena's diagnosis. Marlena's clinical lens, dissociative amnesia, offers a coherent frame for why Rachel's actions and effect don't line up, suggesting a mind that quarantined the worst memory to survive the moment. If that dam breaks, Rachel's 6-word confession could save Kristen, while plunging the girl into an entirely new phase of reckoning and treatment. The paradox is cruel. Healing may only arrive by reliving what hurts most, in public, under pressure. Stephanie's ex returns. Stephanie Johnson's week turns treacherous as an ex circles back with the right words and the wrong energy, promising change while triggering the muscle memory of manipulation that took years to unlearn. Spoilers place Jeremy Horton in the stalker-adjacent zone, a presence whose return to Salem feels less like closure and more like an ignition switch for danger she thought was behind her. The timing is no coincidence in a town where past mistakes show up on the doorstep precisely when the future looks bright. Stalker question and Salem job. Jeremy's new job is the perfect camouflage, integrating him into daily routines and shared spaces where a chance encounter can be engineered 3 times before lunch without raising alarms. That proximity is the real threat, giving a manipulator access to Stephanie's schedule, habits, and safe places. Critical data for anyone planning to unsettle rather than support. If the stalking escalates, the margin for intervention shrinks with every polite smile and quick coffee. Alex draws a line. Alex Kyriakis shifts into protector mode, making it clear that whatever happened in the past will not be replayed on his watch, even if it means drawing heat or crossing social lines to keep Stephanie safe. Protective warnings in Salem sometimes backfire, but they also reset the power dynamics, signaling to bad actors that their target isn't isolated and won't be cornered quietly. In a town of lingering secrets, loud boundaries can save lives. Corporate undercurrents. Away from the adoption and stalker turmoil, corporate rivalries keep the pot boiling as Xander and Philip square off and brush aside Tony DiMera's overtures, setting the stage for boardroom wars that bleed into family dinners. These clashing agendas ripple outward, influencing who has the resources to fight back when personal crises strike and who gets hung out to dry while the balance sheets settle. In Salem, power struggles are never contained to conference rooms. The Holly pressure cooker. If Sophia's drugging ploy succeeds, Holly becomes the ultimate pawn, an innocent teenager forced to carry the narrative weight of a scandal she never consented to, with Johnny as the intended collateral damage. The cruelty here isn't just the setup but the permanence. Screenshots outlive corrections, and even a retraction won't erase a first impression etched in digital stone. That's exactly why Sophia chose optics over evidence. Paulina and community. As mayor and mother, Paulina senses the civic cost when DiMera drama spills into public trust, pushing her to encourage Theo and others to steady the ship while institutions brace for impact. Community leaders understand that when high-profile families wobble, confidence in processes like adoption and schooling takes a hit that can scare off quieter households from stepping up. Reassurance must come fast, loud, and backed by action. Chanel's strategic calm. Chanel's best move is to keep living the life the adoption workers want to see. Consistent income, stable home, predictable routines, while refusing to be baited into public brawls that feed Sophia's narrative. The quiet accumulation of good days is a counterspell to chaos, and Chanel's discipline is the kind of intangible that can tilt a final decision when the dust settles. Love can't outshout a scandal, but it can outlast one. Rachel's tipping point. Should Rachel's memories resurface, the first rush could be rage, then grief, then a frightening clarity about what she did and why Kristen lied to take the fall. A psychological whiplash that requires swift intervention. Marlena's guidance could transform that moment into a path forward, redirecting punishment energy into treatment and truth-telling that releases the family from its loop. The stakes aren't just legal, they're developmental and lifelong. Jeremy's endgame. If Jeremy's gambit aims to isolate Stephanie, Expect concerned outreach to mutual contacts, subtle smear to reframe her boundaries as overreactions, and calculated appearances that force her to explain herself yet again. Stalking thrives on eroding certainty, and Salem's web of overlapping loyalties gives a skilled manipulator ample leverage to keep victims off balance. The antidote is documentation, allies, and relentless daylight. Johnny's reckoning. For Johnny, the only way through is radical transparency. Own the past, correct the record immediately, and refuse to let Sophia or Leo define the terms of debate about his fitness as a father. Adoption reviewers don't expect perfection. They expect honesty, consistency, and a support network that won't crack under pressure, which Chanel and their family can provide in spades. The sooner he severs the narrative tie between himself and manufactured scandal, the better. What's next in Salem? Expect a week of sharp turns. A school incident that escalates, a manipulated photo that metastasizes, a protective warning that draws a line, and a stalker thread that tightens as old patterns try to reclaim new ground. Through it all, adoption remains possible but precarious. Stalking becomes visible but not yet contained, and Rachel's memory could become the most explosive plot device on the board. This is Salem. The highs and lows are coming, and no one stands at the center without paying a price. Next, Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. How far will Sophia go today on Days of Our Lives? In Salem tonight, tensions rise and moral boundaries are tested as the fate of a newborn and the sanity of a young woman hang in the balance. The episode centers on two parallel worlds: the hopeful, painstaking preparations of Chanel and Johnny as they ready themselves to become parents, and the unraveling of Sophia, whose pain and jealousy morph into something much darker. What begins as a family's earnest effort to provide a stable home becomes a crucible that forces every character to face hard questions about responsibility, forgiveness, and the cost of vengeance. Baby-proofing dreams. Chanel and Johnny do the work of love. The hour opens in a modest apartment transformed by love and anxiety into a makeshift nursery. Chanel and Johnny move like a well-practiced team, patching, padding, and planning. Their chatters are small, nervous jokes about assembling a crib, the forever mundane worry over whether the social worker will notice the missing outlet covers. But their actions speak in a louder language: responsibility. They're not daydreaming about parenthood. They're doing the unglamorous work it demands. Johnny's anxiety is raw and honest. He admits, in a voice that wobbles only slightly, that his employment record is spotty, that puppet of the devil, his old theatrical side hustle, may not count for much on a background check. In that admission we see the kernel of modern adulthood. The knowledge that love alone is not always enough and that parenthood calls for steady footing. Chanel, steady and maternal, smooths his fear with a practical calm. Where Johnny fears the past will define him, Chanel sees potential. A man ready to do better, and a partner willing to do the work. They inventories paperwork, plan a budget, and then hit a snag familiar to any new parent. They don't have a crib. The scene is small, but it's human. Love runs on details. They grin at each other over a laptop, plotting the crib hunt like soldiers preparing for an essential small battle. Theirs is unflashy courage, the ordinary bravery of people who choose stability over drama, who choose to wake at dawn and see the laundry done and the child fed. In a soap world full of schemes and quick fixes, Chanel and Johnny's preparation reads as refreshingly old-fashioned. You earn family by building it, day by day. Melinda's office. A plea, a breakdown, and a dangerous pivot. Cut to Melinda's office, where the scene shifts from homely to clinical, an environment meant for decisions, not melodrama. Sophia bursts in, a woman pushed beyond polite bounds. Her lines are jagged. One moment exasperated, the next pleading, then spiraling into open fury. Trask's weary sigh, "Now what?" captures the professional exhaustion of dealing with crises that are more emotional than procedural. Initially, Sophia's anger reads like raw grief. She fears losing Tesoro, and that fear metastasizes into resentment toward Johnny and Chanel, who seek to build a life for the child she once held. Melinda, steadier and kinder, makes a principled case. Sophia gave up the baby. Under law and under social ethics, the decision has weight. Past actions have consequences. Melinda insists that Chanel and Johnny deserve a fair chance to parent. That appeal to structure, to rules and the best interests of the child, contrasts sharply with Sophia's emotional turmoil. But Sophia's reaction is not the sorrow of someone who has accepted a painful reality. Her cry, "Fuck! I don't want to," erupts like a dam bursting. Melinda tries reason, suggests therapy, urges Sophia to move forward. It's a succession of sensible, compassionate responses that call on tradition. Confession, repentance, rehabilitation. Yet Sophia's trajectory takes a darker turn. The pleading becomes manipulation. The hurt hardens into a grisly determination. She wants Johnny punished, not just to suffer, but to be made to wish he were dead. From schemes to villainy, the descent is chilling. This is the crucial transformation. Sophia doesn't merely scheme. She begins to embrace villainy. Soap operas often flirt with antagonists who scheme for advantage. Sophia escalates beyond petty plots into something resembling vindictiveness and moral collapse. Trask recognizes the change. He warns her, not with moralizing but with a clear-eyed assessment. Do not act on this. He sees the peril in allowing raw emotion to be translated into action. The show uses Trask as the voice of restraint, the professional anchor who reminds viewers that anger unmoored from conscience leads to harm. What makes Sophia's slide especially tragic is that her motive is comprehensible if not excusable. Betrayal, loss, humiliation. But when those motives justify harm in her mind, she crosses a line that the show and decent society cannot accept. Tonight's episode invites the audience to watch not just for plot twists, but for the moral lesson. Pain does not give license to destroy another's life. Vengeance may be intoxicating in the moment, but it corrodes the soul. Stakes for Tesoro, a child's need for safety. At the heart of this conflict is Tesoro, an infant with no agency, who becomes the axis around which adults' selfishness, fear, and love spin. Chanel and Johnny's earnest, sometimes clumsy preparations are not merely plot devices. They're a reminder of what a child needs most: predictability, safety, and adults who put the child first. Melinda's office, a place for sober assessment, stands for the social framework that exists to protect that need. The show frames the adoption process as more than a bureaucratic hurdle. It's a societal mechanism to ensure that a child's future is decided by calm, reasoned judgment, not by the immediate passions of adults. A plea for responsibility and redemption. Tonight's drama is a cautionary tale. In a world awash with quick thrills and instant exposures, Salem asks viewers to remember the old virtues: accountability, steady work, and honorable restraint. Chanel and Johnny embody those virtues. They confront fear with preparation. They answer uncertainty with action. Melinda and Trask stand for the civil institutions that, when working well, protect the vulnerable. Sophia's descent is the warning shot. Let grief be grief, but don't make it an excuse to harm others. The episode ends on a fragile balance. Will Sophia be stopped before she harms anyone? Will Chanel and Johnny pass the inspection and provide Tesoro the home the infant deserves? Days of Our Lives leaves us with the necessary tension between justice and mercy. The salutary message, one that resonates with traditional values, is clear. Society must protect the weak, encourage redemption, and demand that adults take responsibility for the lives they touch. Tonight, Salem reminds us that real courage is quieter than a plot twist. It is the patient work of preparing a crib, filling out forms honestly, and showing up each day for the children in our care.